I am more than. I kind of want to ask you, AJ, like, do you feel supported in the high school from the administration and the teachers, the faculty? Do you feel like they are your allies? And if not, like, how can teachers be your ally? How can people within the high school help create a safe space, safer space? Let me say that.
Um, I don't think a lot of teachers, but specifically one teacher in my experience is Profe Estacio. She's been a really great help. Like after the tragic murder of George Floyd, in our last class, she called me out after class. She just wanted to let me know that she's here for me. She'll do anything for me. She'll advocate for me. And she said, even if it comes to a point where, I say something that's could potentially harm my job, I'll say it for you because I'm here for you. And that spoke a lot to me. That made me like understand that she's here for me, not just, as my teacher, but as someone, as a friend, someone who can actually like has power and can use that position to help us uh, get our voices out.
Thank you for answering.
I just want to say that that is real, like deep allyship. I just want to say that. So thank you to all the panelists for your input and contribution in the conversation. At this time, we're going to open the floor for a Q&A session, okay? So attendees, please feel free to type any questions in the chat. I will go through these questions and direct them to our panelists from day 3. I ask that when a panelist is ready and would like to answer a question, so please let me know. And just for everybody else, for respect of the panelists, that's going to mute their microphones.
While we're waiting, I do want to thank you all for joining us today and for taking your time over the course of the weekend to spend time with us. We're going to be very tight in time as we get towards the end, so I'm going to give my kind of closing speech now that I think it's extremely wonderful to know that you're all present in this conversation, which means that your investment is not lost upon us, that you are really truly here to affect change and to make this world a better place. And it goes far beyond a better chance. It goes beyond NCHS. It just goes to being, as I said many times before, better humans. So I thank you all for that. And we'll continue. Daryl, do you want to take away with that first question?
Absolutely. So this is for everyone, and Gabby kind of touched on it in terms of responsibility. How can the town engage in the work of allyship and undoing racism?
Go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah.
So I can jump in. I think that I'm really proud of what the English department has already done at the high school, but it's just happening in such small pockets. It needs to transcend all of the classrooms from K through 12. And to be a better ally is to fully comprehend and turmoil with the societal, social, and systemic oppressions that this country was built on so that we can intentionally disrupt those in our daily practices. And I never really saw that happen when I was there as a student or an adult. And so it really is like taking a moment to ask yourself what perspectives were missing from my own education that the youth should have and that my children should have.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, Daryl?
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've been thinking about with New Canaan and specifically with our high schoolers, and like I know I've been able to work with Tommy for the last 4 years, and he's incredible, and like how much pressure and stress is put onto our high school students at large, and like what our town prioritizes and values, and like it's like grades, and it's being perfect, and it's being skinny, and it's being straight, and it's being like athletic, and like all like, and like so what it is that we prioritize to our students, and like that nowhere in there is like empathy, or nowhere in there is like to see other people and to like understand, like we're kind of at odds with each other to like get into like you have to be in the best school and you have to be the best athlete, and like so how do we like create a society that values like how it is that we interact with one another and not for our own personal and self-gain. And for me that transcends allyship across all sectors, but like I mean that probably starts in the house, right? Like that starts in like what our families teach us and value, but like there has to be something where like how are we motivating people to like what to be empathetic to one another and to like see one another. And I think that that is like so ingrained in like the water that is here. And that's something really difficult to unpack, of course. But
Can I say one thing? It seems to me that Jelani and Daryl and all the ABC boys have done something that New Canaan never thought to do. And that is looking at what experts we have. All of the young people on here are so woke and impressive. It gives me hope for the future. But there are some old people, old farts like me, and ex-presidents and ex-host families that probably have, you know, so much experience that if there was a one-day ABC day like this, where alumni came out and current students, and we spoke post-pandemic without masks and got to share some of the things each of our families have learned, each of the board members have learned. I'm just realizing Jeannie Shaw, Kim Camp, there's so many people in our town that are still here, but as we move on, we take our knowledge with us. So I love that you've brought everyone together. That is the future, and maybe there should be an ABC of the future one-day seminar get together where we get to do this kind of connecting, because it's very special.
Definitely, definitely. I have a question for Bianca, and then I'm also going to direct that same question to Tommy. So how do you actively unpack your white privilege in your homes, work, etc.?
I think it's a few things. And one of the things I really I've been taking notes this whole time because everybody has such incredible things to say. But one of the things that Mr. Curran talked about was growing up, you know, with that relationship to religion and giving back. And I think that was something that I was also raised in significantly. And also in the sense of, you know, especially right now, having these conversations, like I know AJ talked about this, but I did reach out to friends of mine and after the death, we're like, how are you feeling if you need someone just to listen? A big thing that I've had to grapple with and sit with is also just listening, not talking, you know, and learning, and always acknowledging that you're going to learn. Will said it, your allyship is always changing, and being willing to be open in that way, I think is huge. In my work specifically, I have a Black founder. I work for a tech company. Less than 1% of Black founders reach Series A funding, which is a horrific number. And it's terrifying if you're looking at all the money that is going into different startups right now. He, since day one, has talked to us about his experiences, have let us not only be allies, but ask him difficult questions that may to us be scary, that may, you know, make us feel insecure when we ask them. But I think it's by going out and making sure that you as yourself are open. You as yourself are always ever evolving and learning and giving that vibe off to other people as well.
That's perfect. How about you, Tommy?
Sorry, Daryl, do you mind repeating the question?
Absolutely. So the question is, how can you actively unpack your white privilege in your homes? Specifically, let's talk about your home and then also at school and in your community.
Yeah, I think that like we kind of look over our white privilege in this town, especially just because with all the people who've grown up alongside and just kind of like the community that we're involved in. But I think that like going along with white privilege, I think we just have like a lot of power to kind of use our voice and kind of speak up, especially in our community, and be a better ally and kind of be able to like help those that don't, or their voices kind of go unheard.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking up, and like we said, like I said earlier, you know, silence it does nothing. You know what I mean? So I think that speaking up is very huge. I have one question, and Gabby, I'm gonna head this to you because it's gonna flow right in. We have what can, you know, New Canaan High School teachers, and we'll say New Canaan High School teachers, but we'll also say in Fairfield County, and just in general as educators, what can they do to be better allies for BIPOC students? And please, somebody correct me if I say this incorrectly. BIPOC, in case for anybody who doesn't know, it stands for Black and Indigenous People of Color.
So there are so many ways that schools can approach this work. The ways that I've seen it at my schools differ from what New Canaan will choose and have chosen to do already. But it's so important to just make sure that, I feel like somebody said it before, that there's so much in the way of just empathy And teaching empathy is so difficult, but there are ways that you can do that. And so through literature and reading the whole book, not just part of the book, right? And making sure that you're having a discussion and unpacking those complex concepts with each other is really the best way, but it really has to start at the young age. I think 5 years old is not too early to start these discussions, reading those representations of different cultures, ethnicities, and races. It really will help to awaken students and be able to identify in the moment when this is happening and disrupt that, and intentionally throughout their lives become more intentional and better leaders. They have a lot of hiring power and there's a lot of privilege in New Canaan. So those things do matter in the classroom.
That's great, Gabby. Thank you so much. And I know we have tons of educators and people that work in these school systems. So thank you so much for giving your input on that. I'm going to direct this question to Caroline. And thank you so much for everything, Caroline. How can the religious community support this humane spirit and community that Will spoke about?
Yeah, it's really exciting to see so many faces that I got to know through youth group at the Congregational Church on this call, and even as panelists. We don't by any means have a premium on supporting the ABC House, but I think religious organizations are that place of empathy and vulnerability, among other places. And so as I was reflecting about why youth group might have been a safe space for scholars and how maybe it could be a safer space, I think it was a place where hopefully you all felt when you came, Daryl and Jelani and Devon, that you were safe, that you were seen, that you belonged. That's the message that I wanted to make sure all of our kids felt, that like, you don't have to achieve or perform your way into this. Growing up in New Canaan, the bar is high and it's in the water. It's not even something people are directly saying to you that you have to achieve and do and perform. You just kind of figure it out that by 5th grade, if you're good at lacrosse, you're going to do it as much as you can and be the best that you can. And you're just going to do it all the time. Pick it. We're all trying to excel. And as ABC scholars, you have that, you all said it yesterday, we had to earn our spots. We had to get our way in here. And so I think religious communities can be places where you get to take a breath, where you get to kind of let your shoulders grow back and take deep breaths and know that you don't have to perform, you don't have to achieve. You get to be here because you are, because you're wonderful and there's no set of expectations. But I think even those communities need to then think about, okay, but what does it then mean to welcome in students who are coming from minority experiences? Yes, ABC scholars, and then others. And then how do we make sure that we are making it safe spaces for them, whether it's around gender and sexuality or ethnicity, that we are making sure that we are creating spaces that are safe and inclusive and highlight. And I think that we're not trying to minimize and say we're all the same and our experiences are so common, that there's difference and that's good and that can be celebrated. I think religious communities, youth groups, churches are places where difference can be shared and celebrated.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I want to ask Russell a question that Ariana asked. How can the host family make this house a place of rest and recuperation, as described in one of the panels this weekend for the ABC Scholars?
So specifically about what host siblings can do, host families can do, I think prep work is important. And I don't mean to say I think I did a good job with this. I think this is something I could have done a lot more of. But I know there's an ABC recommended reading list that the scholars have to read. I could have read that too. There's a book that's given to host parents about the history of the ABC program and interviews with ABC scholars going back to the 1960s. This is that host parents read. I just read that recently and I found that really eye-opening. I should have read that 10 years ago. So doing prep work about the ABC program, and of course, starting the conversation really early on with the scholar that's going to come into your house and getting to know them and their family will just make it a really inviting opportunity from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I have a question that I'm going to direct to AJ. Give me just a moment because we have a lot of questions coming in. For AJ and the ABC alums, what is/was your relationship like with the ABC board? how can that relationship change in order to become more relationship based and supportive of the boys at the house?
Um, I don't think we have a close enough relationship with our board. Like, if we're being honest, I can only name probably 5, maybe 6 members of the board. And I know there's a lot more and they talk about it a lot, but we just don't see them or interact with them. We have like 2 board parties a year, but I don't think it's enough. And as far as like getting closer with them, I think sometimes like this year with our tutor situation, they tried to push having a black tutor on us. Like, of course, having black people on the board matters to us, but I think it's just a matter of if it's someone we can relate to and like try to relate to, and if they try to relate to us and try to like help us getting here and understanding what it's like to be here become better for us and easier for us to adjust to this program and this lifestyle. Because as our board, you're supposed to help us, not from the shadows, but like with us as well. But that's how I feel.
Definitely. I'm gonna ask a question, and I'm gonna direct it to anybody, any of the scholars or alum. And this is actually from Jelani's host family. Do the scholars have suggestions for how to better engineer interactions with the non-ABC community in New Canaan?
So it's interesting because it's one of the ways that I think that, I look back to my time at ABC, and Polly probably feels this way too, that it was a kind of like a glory day, right? There was something about it that was very like, Barack Obama just became president. It was like, look at these amazing scholars. I was in the drama department and soaring high in that, and constantly in the town newspaper and things like that. And that naturally gravitated an attention to the program, right? An attention that's not just the people on the board, an attention that's not just the people at the church. It was just like the name of the program was finding ways into the homes of every single person in New Canaan. And how do we do that without putting the pressure on these students to be that big top star that can really go out to people and say, hey, I'm Jelani Aladdin, you should know about me. Like that just is my nature, because I'm an actor, and that's my outgoing nature. But I think that one of the ways that we tried the car wash, right? But there's something weird about the car wash, because it's like the boys are doing labor that feels a little weird, and so there's a weird balance there. And I think that maybe the fundraiser also gets a little tricky, because there's drinking involved, and sometimes situations from adults go from them being adults to them being drunk adults, and that's tricky to navigate too. I think that if I had a suggestion, I think it would be kind of like the town does this thing where they like block off Main Street for a day. I can't remember what day it is. But like, what if the ABC house had like a stand there where like it was a fundraiser event, kind of like a thing, but it was in moments when the whole town gathered, so that like it wasn't separate. Then the ABC fundraiser wasn't separate from the town events. Does that make sense? It's finding a way to integrate those two, which is probably easier said than done.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And we had a really good question, and I want to go back, especially since we're talking about allyship. I want to go on this one, and I'm going to give my response to it as well and pass it off to someone else. How do you know when someone is showing performative allyship versus genuine allyship? And the one thing I'll say, speaking from being a person of color, is you feel it. You can't miss it. You can just tell when people are being real and when they're faking, and when they do it privately, it is performative, right? Because you're not doing it in the real moment when things really happen. You're kind of doing it behind the scenes when it's convenient, and when you can have a one-on-one with that person. But being an ally is tough, and you know what? You lose friends from it. And that's just the truth. You lose people in your life. You may even create some problems with family members. But that is what it really is. That is what allyship is understanding that being an ally is more important than making someone feel good or feel comfortable. Being an ally a lot of times is about being uncomfortable. So that's my answer to that. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say about that part, but I feel really passionate about that. You know, it's a feeling, you know, you can just tell. So I'm gonna open up the floor to anybody else if they'd like to respond.
Yeah, I think it's the ever old saying it's quality and not quantity, right? It's like, you know, sure, it's interesting because in the beginning of once after post George Floyd's murder, I really was on this whole thing about using your own words, right? Like not reposting something, but actually just saying how you feel about the situation in your own words. And I think that you don't have to do that every day. No one's asking you to do that every minute of your day. Kind of like what Michael was saying, is like, we're not asking you to put yourself before us, but in a situation where it does arrive, or maybe in a private moment when you're with your family and you say, hey, let's just actually talk about this. Let's actually like have a sit down. That's actually more stronger allyship, I think, than being like hashtag da 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 every day. Do you know what I mean? I think there's actually a genuine want to communicate, to conversate, to negotiate, to reckon, to really flesh out where you stand, what you know, and what can be improved. And I think that is the dedication of an ally, and that naturally cuts any performative nature out of it.
And can I also say it's not about being perfect. Being an ally is every single one of our panelists this whole weekend.
Absolutely.
When you walk the walk, when you every single day have that generally in your heart, it doesn't matter if you defend the kid in the wrong way. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I would say all the wrong words. As I said, you guys all sound so much more woke than I do, but walking the walk is what's important today. And there's a lot of PC and social media. And Jelani, you said something right away about, oh, everybody's got to post. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure I have to post. I just have to walk the walk. And that to me is the most important.
Kwaku, do you want to give a response to that?
Yeah, very quickly. And it's something that, you know, I've talked with Matt offline and we've had this chat, but I want to kind of get to this place of like, allyship it can be exhausting. And, you know, some people do get exhausted about like, oh my gosh, do I have to like, and they kind of like question, do I have to talk about this? Do I have to do that? And it's like, I want white people to realize one thing. If you are getting exhausted, feeling the need to speak up, imagine what it's like living in our shoes where every day we've been having this conversation since we were kids. We've been taught to live in a white world. So that exhaustion you're feeling, I do not feel sorry for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that's blunt. I'm sorry if that's rude. I do not feel sorry if you feel exhausted that you have to speak up and against racism, systemic racism and these issues. But what I will say is like, to be a genuine ally, you have to be passionate about it. You have to truly either be passionate about the work that you are already knowledgeable on or passionate about learning more about this, because we all can learn. I'm still learning how to be an ally to women. I'm still learning how to be an ally to women of color. I'm still learning about privileges that I exhibit because, you know, even being a man of color, I still exhibit privileges myself. And that's an awareness that we all have to have. We all have some sort of privilege. And using that privilege to use our platforms to speak out is so important, to be able to get to a place where these issues don't exist. And we're very far from that. So that is my take on performative and genuine allyship.
Yeah, I think that's great. And
Daryl, we have one more time for one last question. If you want to do one last question, okay?
Perfect. Let's do one last question. So I want to go back to a question, and I want to direct it at the scholars and alum currently in the program. Do you think it matters or helps having resident directors of color?
I personally think that would be amazing. I personally think that is a powerful solution that would actually kind of change the entire home structure of it, feeling that like when Shannon and Cresta were our host, our RDs, they actually felt like my guardian. Like there was a level, I got to a level of them where I felt like that is my guardian. And I can only imagine the level that could be achieved if the RD were people of color. We're also people who, are familiar with the New Canaan culture, familiar with the things they're going through, so that a guardian also becomes a friend, also becomes an ally, also becomes a resident director, also becomes a part of your life, because they're living in the same house as you every day. Well, if that's how we leave it, that's how we leave it.
Anyone else have any comments on that? Or?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of scholars and alum have talked about throughout the 3 days, like not having a place to go when they're experiencing a lot of these things that honestly is trauma. And so having, people of color who are the RDs will just give scholars that access to someone who understands a lot of the situations they're going through, because they may have gone through similar situations in their life. Whether they're from a similar location as us, or they're living their lives in white spaces as well. So I think that is a key thing that could help a lot of scholars.
Well, thank matters.
Yeah,
representation matters.
It does. And on that note, I will say thank you all so much for joining us this weekend. This has been, for me personally, incredibly healing and incredibly educational. And I thank everyone for taking the time to join us. The community of New Canaan, I know, will continue to flourish. I have to believe that. I have to believe that we will all continue to do better, because I see glimpses of it in every single person. I think one of my flaws as a human is I see the potential in people more so than I see what's right in front of me. And I believe that in the potential of this community, and the potential of the people that lead this community, and the potential of the people that lead this program. And I will hold myself to that standard as well. So thank you all so much for joining this weekend. This has been a chance to unpack, continue to have these conversations, continue to share love, continue to challenge other minds. Thank you all so much. I give you all my love. Bye, guys.